everybody. Good morning. Hey, good to see you guys. I'm on. Hello, check 1, 2. Hey, good to see you guys this morning. Welcome on a beautiful Sunday morning. Hey, just want to say this. For the last couple of weeks, I know Pastor Coach told you guys about this a couple of weeks ago, but we're in a season right now where we're just trying to get our head and our heart around kids ministry. Paula was praying about the church. And one of the ways that we value the church is we value the future of the church, which is our kids. And so for the last month, 5 weeks or so, I've been hanging out down with the kids while you guys were worshiping. I was teaching them about Jesus and the Samaritan woman and how essentially everything that I'm going to tell you guys in the next 35 minutes, but in a different story, hanging out with the kids. And so we're just we're in a season here for the next probably month and a half, 2 months. I feel like Kemp and I need to get our head and our heart around what our kids ministry is and what it needs to be, so that then we can staff it and position it in a way that we think we're really raising kids up into the next season of church life, which will far outlast each of us in this room. And our kids ministry has been excellent, but it's been excellent in a way that we have not seen it or understood it because we've been up here all the time. So just wanted to say that I just got done hanging out with your kids if you're a parent, and your kids are awesome. Like, they're learning, they're inquisitive, they're curious, all the things that we want to value in us as adults. Like, it's really cool to see them in your kids. And also, one of the things that we're experimenting with, this is just for parents. If you're not a parent, you can stop listening. Just kidding. But if you're a parent, one of the things that we're teasing around trying to figure out is it possible for us to do the same content up here that we're doing with our kids, so that when we're finished, so that y'all can have conversations? Instead of after church saying, hey, what'd you guys talk about today at church? I don't know, whatever it was, and then you talked about something different. We want to see maybe if we can create some conversations between parents and kids, but you're kind of like both primed with the same content so that you can actually go somewhere with the conversation. So we're experimenting a bit over the next several weeks. We've been for the last several, and our hope is by fall, we've got it all. By fall, it's all figured out, and then we've got the right people in place, and we're just off and running. But thanks for releasing Kemp and I often to go downstairs and hang out with your kids. They're awesome. Good? Okay, if you would, turn in your Bibles to Acts chapter 17. What we did with the kids this morning in John chapter 4, we're going to do the same content, but we're going to be in a different story. Because I just didn't think this might be a little more advanced than the kids are ready for, but it's the same stuff. So Acts chapter 17, just the brief context here is Paul is on a missionary journey. He's just gotten run out of 2 cities. In one city, they just ran him straight out. In the other city, some really cool things were happening. And the people from the city before that came, and they ran him out because they were frustrated by him and angry at him. And so Paul has to leave pretty quickly, and most of his team stays in the city where he was. And so Paul finds himself in Athens, and he's just kind of waiting. He's kicking it, waiting for his team to come. But Paul isn't like just on vacation in Athens. He's a devout follower of Jesus. He's an apostle. He's seeking to love people into the kingdom of Jesus and proclaim the truth. So while he's there, Paul, again, he's not there for R&R, but Paul does in Athens what he does everywhere. And we're going to see that in Acts chapter 17, verse 16. All right? So here we go. Let's step in. So now, while Paul was waiting for his teammates to come join him, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him. Okay, so here's where I just want us to stop right there and just recognize that Paul, the apostle, was provoked, agitated, angered. There's a little frustration bubbling up inside of the apostle Paul. And the reason why I wanted us to lean into this story in Acts 17 is because, yes, Paul is provoked, but what I also want to draw the bridge to is to recognize that we live in a day where the world around us is also provoked, agitated, frustrated, angered. But it's not just the world out there that is provoked, because many of us in here, we find ourselves, if we're honest, we are provoked about certain things that are happening in our culture. We're agitated by things that we're hearing, whether from politicians or pundits or business leaders or whatever. Like, many of us in this very agitated day, in this agitated, provoked culture that we live in, many of us find ourselves in that same place. but for and oftentimes very different reasons. But the question is, in Acts chapter 17, as Paul is in Athens, why is he agitated? Why is he provoked? Well, in Luke, who wrote the book of Acts, is going to tell us why. So Paul was waiting for them at Athens. His spirit was provoked within him. Here's why. As he saw that the city was full of idols. Right, so Paul is in Athens. He's waiting for his friends. He's walking around. And what we have to recognize is that Paul comes from a devoutly monotheistic people, right, where Yahweh is one. The Lord, our God, is one, the great Shema, okay? So every Jewish person knew that God was one. So now Paul, knowing that God is one, and that is the truth, Father, Son, and Spirit, steps into Athens and sees a whole bunch of people who believe that God is many. And Paul sees that, and it provokes him. And it's appropriate that he would be provoked by that. Like, just go back to the Ten Commandments, right? The Old Testament law is replete. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. But if you ever get confused, we'll just condense it down into the Big Ten. And if you read the Ten Commandments, the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. Well, the Athenians are violating that one. That's rule number one, and they just messed that one up completely. Rule number 2 of the Ten Commandments is, you shall make no idols for yourselves out of images made of stone fashioned out of gold, silver, whatever. Well, now the Athenians are 0 for 2, okay? We're out of the gate, and the Athenians are clearly wrecking the core basic instructions that God has given humanity. And Paul, right, in his being provoked about that, his heart is actually aligning with God's heart. Because worshiping other gods and worshiping idols also provokes Jesus. So let's just say that in Paul's being provoked here, that his heart is aligned with the Spirit of God, and he's keeping in step with what the Spirit of God is feeling as the Spirit of God accompanies Paul all around Athens. He's being provoked for good and for right reasons. Now, let's take a bridge into our modern day just for a second, and let's think about you for a second. Again, many of us are provoked, we're agitated, we're frustrated, we're angry about a whole bunch of different things. And if you find yourself in that place of being agitated this morning, here's what I want to say to you. You are not wrong for being agitated. When you get provoked, it's not a sin. It's something that the Apostle Paul feels very deeply. It's something that Jesus felt very deeply when he walked into the temple. Jesus was provoked. It's something that the Spirit of God, as the Spirit of God hovers over the surface of the earth and observes all the things that are going on, the Spirit of God is also provoked by many of the things that he sees and he hears. So if you find yourself provoked this morning, you may be provoked for good reason. Okay, I just want to say that, and I want to affirm that. But if you are provoked about something this morning, then here's what we also need to be clear on. That if you are only provoked and nothing else, then there's going to be a tremendous danger that your provocation is going to come out in some negative and dysfunctional and broken ways, right? That you're provoking, right, whatever is provoked inside of you, that we need to add a missing ingredient to that to make you being provoked actually a good and right thing. Now let's talk about ingredients, because being provoked we also need to add an ingredient to that. Ingredients are very important. It was several years ago now where Megan and I and our family were invited to a picnic at the farm of an Amish family. Anybody who's like fans of the Amish in the house? I love the Amish community. I have great respect for them. I'm fascinated by their lifestyle, and so I was thrilled to get the invite to go to the Amish farm to hang out with this family and some of their friends, right? It was kind of a bigger group. And while we were there, we learned during the picnic that the Amish family had made ice cream for everybody, which was like an extra treat, right? I'm already at the Amish farm, hanging out with them, getting to talk, and the fact that ice cream is coming is like, this is the best day ever, okay? So then the ice cream comes out, and I get my bowl, and then I go and I take my first spoonful of ice cream, just so excited, right? And as soon as I put it to my mouth, I became provoked. But do you know why I was provoked? Because to my taste buds, the ice cream was missing an ingredient. And the ingredient that it was missing was sugar. I don't know what ice cream's like in the Amish world, like generally, but it seemingly like this family was like a low or no sugar kind of a family. And so they had all of the ingredients of the ice cream right, like the milk and the eggs and the cream and everything but the sugar was in there. Okay, but let me tell you, but if you just leave out one ingredient, it changes the whole thing. And it takes you from something that you're greatly anticipating to something that I took one bite and I like found a place to put it and leave it. I felt guilty for throwing it away, so I just like put it down. Don't judge me for that. I was confused, okay? But I put the ice cream down because I couldn't eat it anymore, right? Because for me, ice cream means sugar. If there's no sugar in there, it's not ice cream, it's like cold cream, which is different than ice cream, right? But it was unpalatable for me. Ingredients are so important. So if you find yourself provoked, that's great. You're in good company. Paul was provoked. Jesus was provoked. The Spirit of God is regularly provoked. But we have to add to that the ingredient of love. Love, right? If we are provoked without love, our provocation, our agitation is going to lead to train wrecks all around us. But if we have the missing ingredient, and oftentimes, right, in the world around us and even in the hearts of many Christians, we are provoked, but we're like the ice cream was low or no sugar, we are low or no love in our being provoked. And let's just think about love for a second. It would be entirely inappropriate for us as followers of Jesus to be low or no on the ingredient of love. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says to his disciples, right? It's just one thing. He says, the world is going to know that you are mine by what? By how you love one another. Because God is love. It's who he is, right? It's like the irreducible complexity nature of God. He is love, full on. And so when we're in relationship with him, we're going to receive from him. And if we're receiving from him, we're going to get a lot of things, wisdom and kindness and peace, patience, all that stuff. But for sure, if God is love, we're going to receive love, okay? So the world will know that you are my disciples by your love. And then Jesus, right, so often, this one part of my discipleship where every time I read this, I am like deeply and grossly challenged in a beautiful way, where Jesus says, if you are going to be my disciples, then, this is a non-negotiable. This isn't like we'll get to it later in your discipleship, or maybe you'll get there at some point 50 years down the road. But a non-negotiable is that as followers of Jesus, we will love our enemies. That's the people that hate you. That's the people that are talking bad about you. That's the people that like, you just got this chasm of difference between them for whatever reason. Jesus says, if you're going to follow me, then you're going to grow in your ability to love them, because in my disciples, love will never be a missing ingredient. We're never going to be low or no on love. It's always going to be there. Okay, so love is and always has been the central ingredient in those who will follow the one true God. So Paul is provoked. But what I want us to see here, and Luke doesn't feel like he needs to add this, because we know that followers of Jesus, they'll be known by their love and they'll love their enemies. What we have to know is that Paul is provoked and he is not low or no on the love ingredient. He is full on with it. So Paul is provoked and he loves. And now that's the only way that we're going to be able to understand everything that he does from this point on. If you're just provoked and you don't have love, then what Paul does here will make no sense to you. You will be confused and you will write it off and you'll forget that this is even in the Bible. But if you're provoked and agitated and you also love, then you will understand exactly what Paul is doing here and what is motivating him to do it. Let's look at verse 17. So Paul's spirit is provoked within him because he saw that the city was full of idols. Verse 17. So what does he do? Here's where the action comes in, right? So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. Okay, so what Paul does after he's provoked by what he sees is he actually begins to engage the very people who are provoking him. He engages them in discussion, right? Which is pretty crazy and abnormal here. Because what we normally do when we're provoked is we don't go to the people that are provoking us. What we do, and check my math here, see if this makes sense to you in the world that you see. When we get provoked, we don't go to the people who are provoking us. When we get provoked, what we do is go to other people who are similarly provoked about the same things that we're provoked by, right? So like this, people that are provoked by the same things are all watching the same YouTube videos. And the people that are all provoked about the same thing are reading the same blogs, right? We're all just hanging out together. And the people that are provoked, like they're all on the same text thread, sharing about how they're provoked about the same thing, right? We don't go to the people that provoke us, we go to the people that are similarly and likewise provoked. And then in those places where we just gather around with other people who are provoked in the same way that we are, it becomes this provocation echo chamber where our agitation levels actually go exponential. And then we go from provoked to like furious. And then we look at everybody who's different than us or the people on the other side, and we just label insults, and we break them down, and we bust them up, and we level them with our words, and they're the enemy, and we hate them. Is that not the world that we live in? It is. That's the world that I observe every single day. But what Paul does is he actually goes and he begins to engage the idolaters in discussion and conversation, right? It's fascinating to me that Paul actually steps towards these people rather than what most of us do is we step away further from the people that we are provoked by. He moves towards them. Now, where in the world did Paul learn this as a strategy for dealing with people who provoke you? I would argue that he learned it from God himself, who, as I said earlier, is often provoked, well, not often, but always provoked by us and our sin. It's the stuff that we do, it's our junk, it's our dysfunction and darkness and brokenness, that when God looks at that, he is provoked. And what the Father, Son, and Spirit could do along with the angels is they could say, hey, look at those knuckleheads. And then the Father, Son, Spirit huddle together and the angels gather around and those guys are dumb, they're morons, they're stupid, they're right. Think of all the words that God's more creative than me. He could come up with a lot of words to level insults at us because he's provoked by us. But wait a second, let's not forget that God isn't just provoked. He's not missing the ingredient of love. He's not low or no on love. He's full on love. And so God, instead of sequestering himself further from us and alienating us, himself from us more, what he actually does in his being provoked plus love is Jesus moves towards us. For God so loved the world that he gave or sent his only Son to get into close proximity with us. Right? That's what God does. Now, we've preached a similar sermon to this probably 50 times in the last 7 years. The reason why we have to keep preaching this is because this is so foreign to us, and it's so alien to us, and it is so hard for us to actually get it and start walking in it. Right? So Jesus is provoked, and he draws close to us. He incarnates among us. He makes himself low before us, even to being birthed here as a vulnerable baby. That's the movement of God. That's what provoked plus love does. It draws closer to the people who are provoking them. So, when Jesus came, I just want us to be clear on this, because bats can be used for a lot of different things, right? So when Jesus shows up among us as the creator and sustainer of the heavens and the earth, right? You talk about like a home run swing, like, whoa, Jesus has got some power, okay? Watch out when Jesus swings, because he's got some torque there, right? So when Jesus shows up and he's provoked by our very selves, he looks at our lifestyle and says, oh, I'm agitated by that, right? If Jesus is carrying the bat, watch out, run, hide, get as far away from him as you can. Unless God is love, and he's provoked by our life, and he loves us. And here's the great difference between the two regarding what Jesus does with his bat. If Jesus is singularly and only provoked by us, then he incarnates, and when he turns 32 years old, he grabs his bat and he starts busting out kneecaps, and he starts breaking open skulls, and that's us, and that's not cool, right? And he just starts going to town on us. If Jesus is only provoked, watch yourself, because he's got a swing. But Jesus, who is provoked, incarnates among us, and he's got his bat, right? But it's his being provoked plus love that causes him to take that magnificent swing that he has. Oh, it's a good swing. But instead of directing it towards our kneecaps, he directs it towards the wall that is separating us from him. And he sees sin, and he says, that's the problem. And he starts just bashing the thing, just wrecking it. And he goes low, and he goes high, and he just wrecks the wall that is the dividing barrier between us and him, right? Now, we need to understand the difference between what Jesus does with his bat and why he does it with his bat. Because whether he's coming for our kneecaps or whether he's coming for the thing that separates us from him, that's a big distinction. And how he approaches me is going to determine how I respond to him. But praise the Lord that he comes with being provoked at our sin, but he comes with love to destroy that thing that is destroying us. He destroys the dividing wall of hostility that exists between us and him. Ephesians 2, he destroys the dividing wall of hostility that exists between us and each other. Why? Because God wants to draw close, and he longs to be in relationship with. You take away the missing ingredient of love, and we're in big, big trouble. You add that into who Jesus is, and we get rescued. Huge cataclysmic differences in whether love is there or whether it is not, okay? Verse 18, Paul continues, and Paul is simply just living out what he has already seen in Jesus here in Athens. Verse 18, Paul says, some of the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers also conversed with him. And some of them said, right, check this out, what does this babbler wish to say? Woo! Others said, he seems to be a preacher of foreign divinities, right? Because he was preaching about Jesus and the resurrection. So let's just put this into context for a second again. Paul is provoked because the city is full of idols. They're just wrecking everything that God is seeking to do in the world, okay? Paul's provoked by that. Instead of making them enemies, he moves towards them. As he moves towards them in discussion, their response is, they make fun of him. What is this babbler trying to say? Blah, 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 blah. I hear the words that are coming out of your mouth, but I don't know what you're saying, right? They're making fun of him. Now, I just want us to just think about this from a personal pronoun standpoint here. If you're provoked by something that somebody is doing, and you choose not to make them an enemy, but to move towards them and engage them in conversation, if the first thing you hear out of their mouth is blah, 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 you're an idiot, how are you going to feel about that person? Not good, okay? Where's the bat? Show me some kneecaps, right? We're just being honest here, right? That's how we would want to feel in and of our natural selves. It's time to start busting some people up. But remember, Paul's provoked, but he's not missing the ingredient of love, okay? So let's put it down, because Paul's not going there. Verse 19. And they, right, the group of Athenians that are listening to him, calling him a babbler, blah, what are you saying, you're an idiot. And they took him and brought him to the Areopagus, saying, may we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting. For you bring some strange things to our ears. We wish to know, therefore, what this means. Now, verse 21, all the Athenians and foreigners who live there would spend their time in nothing except telling or hearing something new. So they're calling Paul a babbler. They don't understand what in the world he's talking about. And they say, hey, come speak to us more on this, because you're making zero sense. So Paul then goes to the Areopagus. It's a place where the leading minds and intellectuals would gather and just philosophize and talk, okay? And then this is what we see in verse 22. So Paul goes there, and Paul launches in, okay? It's like a TED Talk. It's on the stage, the spotlight comes on, the dun-dun-dun thing, and then Paul just begins his presentation here. Here's what Paul says, right? So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, men of Athens. Boy, what's he going to say? What in the world is he going to say to these people? Paul says, men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. This is astounding and beautiful at the same time. Man, near choked up. Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. Right here, two things that Paul is doing right out of the gate here that just amaze me and say, like, Paul, I just want to learn from you. Brother, wow. First thing is Paul has been, regarding the people who are provoking him, he's been seeking to understand them. Right? He says, I perceive, meaning he's been aware of who they are. He's been seeking to understand what makes them tick. Teaser in verse 23, Paul says, for as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, as Paul has been in Athens and been provoked, he's been seeking to understand what makes the Athenians tick. He's been seeking to get into their heads and into their hearts and to understand why their city is full of idols. He's been seeking to understand them. What we typically do when we're provoked by someone is we don't seek to understand them. What we do is we seek to immediately caricature them. We overgeneralize and oversimplify. And we like, in philosophical terms, we would say we would set up a straw man, right? This is who this person is. And then once you set up a straw man, well, it's really easy to beat down a straw man, a little harder to beat somebody who's a real man, right? But we caricature people who provoke us so that we can feel more justified and more comfortable in simply and only being provoked. But that's not Paul. He's not trying to caricature them as idiots or morons or barbarians or whatever he thinks that they might be, or we might think they might be. He actually wants to understand them and works to get into their heads and to understand their hearts. And then, right from there, then he goes, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. Everyone who's listening to Paul in the Areopagus is taking that as a compliment. He's affirming them. He's agitated by them, he's provoked by them, but he has sought to understand them, and now he is complimenting them on maybe the only thing that he can find to compliment them on. Right? He walks around this city, it's full of idols, and he's like, this is messed up, and that's messed up, and that's wrong, but I think I can work with that. Yes, there's something good going on in them. And that's the thing that he chooses to lead in with. He could have led in with one of the 50,000 criticisms that he has of them, but he doesn't. He leads in with the one affirmation that he can find, and he builds a bridge towards them. Now, let's go back to us for a second. Many of us are provoked, right? And many for good reason. Here is maybe a homework assignment for you. This week, whatever the thing is that's provoking you, whoever the people are that are saying the thing that are provoking you, Could you one, seek to understand them in the way that Paul sought to understand the Athenians? And in so doing, could you find one or two things that you could actually compliment them on and affirm them for? And could we start there? Could we start there with a bridge of dialogue, maybe with the people that we may even be frustrated by? Because that's what Paul does, and that's what Jesus does. And maybe there's like a theme here that we're supposed to engage in similar things in similar ways. Okay, so Paul seeks to understand them, and then right out of the gate, he compliments them. Then verse 23, Paul says, "For as I passed along, walking around Athens, and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription," quote, "to the unknown God," end quote. "What therefore you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you." And what Paul does here, he builds a bridge towards them. Again, he doesn't say, you guys have 5,000 gods and they're all stupid. Why are you wasting your time worshiping them? No, he goes to the one affirmation-worthy thing. You're very religious. And then Paul finds this, right, in this city filled with idols, different gods. He finds the one altar where this is a temple built to a god that the Athenians say, we don't know who he is. And Paul's like, yes, I can affirm that, right? That the Athenians have the humility to recognize that they don't have all this stuff figured out, that there's more to their theological world and the ontological world beyond them than they know, and they have manifested that by building a temple to a God whom they don't know. And Paul says, yes, I affirm that humility. You are right. Thank you for declaring the truth that you don't know all. Thank you for being honest about that. And then Paul takes the one thing that they do know, that they don't know who this God is. And Paul says, now, let's start with what you do know. You don't know who this God is. And Paul says, now, this God, focus on him. I'm here to tell you about this God. He starts with where they have commonality. He starts with where they have agreement. He starts with something that they understand and believe deeply in, and then from that point, then in the next several verses, Paul is going to tell them that this God, whom they don't know who he is the creator and sustainer of all things, and that he visited us, and he went to the cross, and he rose again. He's going to tell them the beautiful, magnificent story that they don't know regarding this unknown God. Amen. Beautiful approach here, right? This is awesome what Paul is doing. Now, what Paul is doing, let's just visualize this again, right? Just to be clear, just to be simple. Paul does not go into Athens and start crushing the kneecaps of the idolaters. He doesn't start breaking open skulls. What he does with the skill of a surgeon is he goes to the dividing wall, the thing that is keeping the Athenians from relationship with this unknown God, who is the one true God, and Paul starts dismantling this wall. And he does it in a way that the Athenians will listen, in a way that they will engage him in conversation. He does it from the perspective of friend, not as enemy. All his fury goes to breaking down the thing that is keeping them from Jesus, right? That's what Paul does. Now, I just want to say, I want to help us see what this may mean for our and your and my life, right? What does this mean for our lives? I want to say this. I wonder if, we're a curious people here. I wonder if, for each of us, our greatest fruitfulness for the kingdom, thy kingdom come, thy will be done, I wonder if our greatest fruitfulness in this world will come through and in the arenas where we are provoked by something. But like Jesus, who was provoked by something, provoked by our sin, but he was guided by love. I wonder if our greatest fruitfulness will come as we follow Jesus in being provoked by certain things, and each of us may have different things that provoke us. But we follow Jesus in being provoked by certain things, but then guided by love. I wonder if that's where our impact and influence is going to most powerfully come through. Right? Similarly modeled by Paul. He was provoked by the idolatry in Athens. And as he engaged them in discussion, he was guided by love, And I think what we're going to see, well, I'm not going to read it, you can read it at home, but there's some fruitfulness that is going to start to happen through Paul here in Athens because of this approach. All right, so some of us wonder, let's put this together and concrete it for us. We wonder why we're here. God, what am I supposed to do? What have you made me for? How should I be spending my time? Well, I wonder if maybe the answer to that question is going to be found in maybe asking this question: what is the thing that provokes you the most of all? What is the thing that makes you the most angry, the most agitated, right? Because your heart is clearly drawn to that thing, whatever it is. And that may be a sign that the Lord has put a passion inside of you regarding that thing. Is it abortion? Is it, I don't know, what is it? What's that thing that agitates or provokes you the most? I wonder if that's the thing that we should be leaning into, but then we should lean into that thing being guided by love. So let me condense it. That we should be, that whatever provokes us should be our driver, and then love should be our guider. You like how that rhymes? I don't rhyme often, but when I do, I want to celebrate it, right? Let the things that provoke you be your driver, and let love be your guider, right? Because the thing that provokes you is going to get you off the couch. It's going to get you moving. It's going to get like, ooh, like your blood's boiling right now. You got to do something. Okay, so let the thing that provokes you start moving you and prompting you to action. And as soon as you get off the couch, immediately, let your moving be guided by love. Guided by love, right? So, I just want to say it one more time, because you're not going to hear me rhyme for another month. This is it. Let whatever is provoking you be your driver, and love be your guider. Okay, I'm so proud of myself. Okay, now, here, let's just put this together in a larger context for a second, just because I want us to understand this. What the enemy comes to do, Jesus was very clear, what the enemy comes to do is to steal, kill, and destroy. Steal, kill, destroy. Do you know how easy it is to steal, kill, and destroy? It requires very little, right? Now, there are surgeons out there who reconstruct knees and shoulders. That takes some skill, but right now, I guarantee you that it wouldn't take much for me to rearrange some knees and some shoulders, okay? The level of skill and creativity and insight that it takes to destroy something is different than what it takes to actually do something positive, okay? So to steal, kill, and destroy, the enemy doesn't have to have much skill, doesn't have to have much creativity. It's just pretty easy. You could wake up one morning, say, I'm gonna go break something, and you could go break it and be back by lunch without breaking a sweat, okay? Vandalism doesn't take much. But what Jesus does is he does not steal, kill, and destroy. He does its opposites, and here are the opposites. Instead of stealing, he actually blesses. He gifts and he gives, okay? Blessing. Instead of killing, Jesus actually imparts life, right? In a whole bunch of different ways, he imparts life. Instead of destroying, Jesus actually builds. So where the enemy steals, kills, and destroys, Jesus blesses, imparts life, and builds. And I guarantee you that it's going to take a whole lot more skill, a whole lot more creativity, and a whole lot more effort to do these things than steal, kill, and destroy. Why is it so easy for us to be provoked and then start busting people up? Well, because it's easy. It doesn't require anything. It happens, like you can snap your fingers and you're right there busting some people down and breaking stuff, right? Ruining relationships, alienating people, talking bad about people. Like gossip doesn't take anything creative, right? But encouragement does. Whole different ball game, okay? So Jesus wants us to join him in the hard work where skill is required and creativity is necessary, where we bless others, where we impart life to them, and where we actually build beautiful things, including relationships. Now, I want to give us an example here, because sometimes we talk about these things and they're a little abstract, and I just want to talk about me for a second. And I'm going to give you an example here. I just want to be clear. I'm not inviting you in to be provoked about the thing that provokes me. I just want to show you, I want to explain to you one thing that does provoke me and how the Lord has directed me regarding it, okay? So this is just purely for illustration. But one of the things that provokes me, and it probably has for, I think since my seminary days, is in seminary, like we lingered in Genesis 1 and 2 quite a bit. I had an Old Testament professor that put God's heart for the whole world, not just souls, but for all of creation, including all people. He just made that very clear and very powerful for me. And so one of the things that I have seen in our American society is that we essentially do a really bad job of ruling and subduing creation. We're not great stewards of this incredible gift that God has given us. Now, I'm not guilting you or blaming you. If you don't recycle, I'm fine with that, okay? Hear me, this is purely for illustrative purposes. I'm not trying to get you to become an environmental steward, okay? But it's something that God has moved in me that I'm pretty passionate about. If you come to my house, you'll see it, okay? And so just facts that you guys don't know. Do you guys know that 40% of all food grown in the United States actually ends up in the landfill? Like almost half of every piece of food that is grown in our country ends up in a landfill. That's a lot. The single greatest ingredient in American landfills is food. It was at one point entirely edible, okay? So now, I don't care if that provokes you or not. I don't care. But for me, right, God gives each of us different passions and for different reasons, and we got to honor those things. And this is one of those things that has become like a provocation for me, that we need to do better. Not we, specifically me and my family. We want to do something about that. Now, there's two strategies that I could adopt regarding how I want to do something about the fact that we waste all this food and it ends up in landfills. Here's strategy number one. Strategy number one is just Brian being provoked, but missing the ingredient of love, okay? I just want to warn you, it's ugly, okay? So Brian being provoked by our lack of stewardship, but not having love, here's what I would probably do. First, I would start a blog. And on that blog, I would tell all of you to visit it. And on that blog, I would start making fun of all the local supermarkets in Summit County. And I would talk about how they're the enemy. And they don't get it. And they don't understand the stats. And they're wrecking the environmental life of our country, and they're the bad guys, and I'd want to win you and show you why they're the bad guys. But a blog wouldn't be enough. I would actually probably have an Instagram account and maybe a Facebook page, and I don't have either, but I would if I was really passionate about this, right? And I would go to all the dumpsters where these local stores are, and I would take pictures of all the food they're throwing away, and then I'd put together creative hashtags about how evil these people are for throwing away all this valuable resource. And I'd want to make sure that all of you saw my Instagrams and saw my posts, and that we were on the same page about how stupid these grocery store people are for just throwing this waste away. And then I wouldn't want to stop there because I'm provoked, right? And in my righteous indignation, I'd have to take it further, because we all do. And then I'd want to show up at the stores, and then I just want to stand outside with signs, and I'd want to boo them, right? Because it's fun to boo. When you're angry at somebody, I'd say, boo, you terrible people, boo, how dare you shop at this store, they're wasting all this, right? And I would just start picketing them, and then, because I'd want the world to see how, these guys are the enemy. Essentially, what I'd be doing, I'm just busting these local store owners up, just taking it to them, okay? That's one approach. That's being provoked minus love. But now let's say strategy number two is similar provokativeness, but let's add a full measure of God is love. I receive from God, so I am walking in love. I'm provoked, now I'm walking in love. Now my strategy is going to look very, very, very different. And like the Apostle Paul, who goes to the Athenians and says, men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. He goes to the people he's provoked by. Here's something that I might do. I might go to a local grocery store and say, hello, grocery store people. I perceive that in every way you are very passionate about food. Because we share that in common, don't we? Yeah, I think food's awesome. They think food's awesome. Let's start there. And then I could say to them, hey, I just noticed, we both love food here. I just noticed that your dumpster is regularly full of food. Could we partner together on that? Could we come up with a plan where, I don't know, maybe I could drop off trash cans, and I'll put them right next to your dumpster. And then when you come out, instead of dumping the food in the dumpster, you can just dump in my trash cans. And every day or every other day, I'll just come and I'll load them up into my truck and I'll take them home and I'll do really good things with it so that it doesn't go to the landfill. We'll make soil out of it. We'll turn it into animal protein. We'll do some cool things. And then what if that store said, yes, let's try that? And what if we tried that? And what if we've been doing that maybe for the last year? Oh, wait, that's exactly what we did. Like there's a local store where we actually are doing that. Like right now, I'm here. They're probably filling my trash cans up with wasted food that's not going to go to the landfill, right? Boy, what a cool approach that being provoked plus love can do. And let me tell you one of the things. We do a lot of cool things with this food, but just because we got the bat out, I want you to see this. One of the things that we do is there's a lot of the food that we get that we can't feed to our animals, and like nobody likes to eat it. And it's typically oranges, lemons, onions, and garlic. Okay, we get quite a bit of that. So to steal, kill, and destroy is pretty easy. To bless, impart life, and to build takes some creativity. Here's one of the things that we do with oranges, lemons, onion, and garlic. I'll take Will, my oldest boy, out back, and we take the bat. And we'll go stand in our orchard, and I'll grab like whatever the resources are, and will stand right here, and I will pitch to him, right? And so I'll take oranges, and sometimes I do the wind up, right? Because there's nobody on base, and then sometimes there's somebody on base, and I got to go straight from the stretch, right? And I'll just pitch to him. Like, it usually takes like 15 minutes to work through all the stuff. And the cool thing about that is I grew up playing Little League, and I love to pitch. I love it. And so now I get to pitch with oranges, lemons, onions, and garlic, and I really actually enjoy that. And here's the other cool thing. My boy Will, he loves to bat. And so as I love to do the thing I love, pitching, he just loves to smack fruit with his bat, right? So he gets to bat. In addition to me pitching and him batting, it's also like good father-son time, which is really cool. And in addition to pitching and batting and father-son time, right, one of the bad things about when you're pitching to your boy and you have like real balls is they hit it and it like really goes somewhere and you got to go chase that. Who likes to chase balls? Not me. But the cool thing is when Will crushes an orange, it's obliterated. It explodes like the Death Star in Star Wars. And so there's no chasing it. Right, and so it's super cool. And then at the end of all of that, as if it's not just cool father-son time and sports time, that when we're done, we've got this, it's like a crime scene of like a fruit massacre where we've got all this fruit that's all around our orchard that is fertilizing and composting in place that's giving our fruit trees nutrients, right? I think that sounds more like the kingdom approach rather than, boo, enemy, how dare you? You're wrong. How could you do that? You're ruining things, right? Which way seems more like Jesus? Because it's so easy to steal, kill, and destroy. You grocery store people are evil, right? It's a whole nother level of creativity to start crushing some lemons in your backyard to the glory of God and to the betterment of all things, including father-son relationships, right? Here's what we have got to get good at doing. We've got to get good at being provoked, because we're all going to get provoked, but we've got to add love to it. And with that added into our provokedness, and we got to ask the Spirit of God, guide my feet to the people that are provoking me, and let me see you move. Let me see your kingdom come, your will being done in this place, because I know you made me for influence. You made me to impact people. You made me to be a game changer here. Not to bust up kneecaps, but man, to compost. We actually call it compost crushing. Hey, Will, you want to go compost crush? We're going to compost crush to the glory of God. And you've got your stuff to do too. You've got things that the Lord has for you to do. So what are you provoked by? Figure it out. Add love into that thing and say, Spirit of God, lead me on. And if we all start to adopt that as the strategy, the Acts 17 strategy way forward, wow, I think the world would think differently of Christians. I think that the kingdom of Jesus would come in furious love, in violent power, and I think things would be so different. That's just what I think. And I think those are the people that we need to become. Band, come on back up here. We're going to sing. And I just ask the Lord, I'm going to ask the Lord now to help each of us to compost crush to the glory of God, to figure out what those things are, right? What those things are that he uniquely has for you to do. And then I just want to say this, just for clarification's sake, and we'll talk about this maybe in the next couple of weeks, but like if you're not a recycler, and if you waste a bunch of food, and you turn on the air conditioning and leave your windows open, I love you. And I'm serious about this. We have got to learn how to be passionate about the things we're passionate about, but then extend great liberty to other people right? So I just ask that you don't think I'm weird. Please, I am, but don't think I'm weird. And I don't think you're weird for being different, right? I just wanted to say that. Okay, so now let's pray. Father in heaven, oh, you sent Jesus into our space even when you were perturbed by us. And you did it because love overflowed your heart for us. And Father, thank you, Father, that in Jesus the dividing wall of hostility has been torn down so that we can run towards you and not away from you. And thank you, Father, that you call us into that same missional enterprise with a broken and a lost world. Help us to take our cues from you, to be provoked but with a full measure of love, and then to seek, to bless and to impart life and to build as you do and as you long to do through us. Would you make us this kind of church? Would you make us these kinds of people? And would we experience the joy that comes from watching you move powerfully in us and around us and among us? This is all about you, it's for you, it's to you, and we are thrilled to be a part of the great story that is unfolding. Would you make our part awesome as you join us and lead us? It's in Jesus' name that we pray. And all of God's people said, amen.